All right, so Trump and Macron at the White House, Musk and Doge under pressure. And tonight, is the southern border close to sealed? That's Topping the Hill on NewsNation tonight.
What he's doing is saying, are you actually working? And then if you don't answer, like you're sort of semi-fired or you're fired.
Well, you're fired is pretty clear. But tonight, it's confusion. After an Elon edict, tell us what you did last week or you could lose your job. Tonight, The Hill reports the Office of Personnel Management has told agency leaders that employee responses should be viewed as voluntary. Hello, good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. Tonight, while the Doge discussions continue to consume Washington, there are several big headlines from our border and beyond. A live look right now at the White House, where President Trump met with France's leader. And it was Emmanuel Macron who touted the potential of a U.S.-backed rare minerals for security deal with Ukraine and said Europe could be willing to step up more in the efforts to keep our allies strong.
We are also well aware that Europeans need to do more for security in Europe, for defense in Europe, and to more fairly share the security burden that your country's been carrying for so many years.
And a live look at the southern border, where tonight the head of the Department of Homeland Security revealing new numbers. Kristi Noem says that Saturday's encounters hit just 200, the lowest in 15 years. But tonight, the status of your federal government and dealings from the commander-in-chief continue to dominate the discussion in this town. Our Joe Khalil live on what is and isn't happening with Doge. But we begin with our Robert Sherman live at the White House once again, where the president could be close to one deal, while also days away from ratcheting up more tariffs. Robert?
Yeah, Blake, to no one's surprise, the war in Ukraine really controlling the conversation here today as the president welcomed his first European ally to the White House in his 47th presidency. President Emmanuel Macron of France, after hosting European leaders in Paris earlier this month, amid concerns that their national security interests were being sidelined by these unilateral talks between Russia and the U.S., said today he sees a path forward to peace.
Now this is a chance, there is a big change because there is a new U.S. administration. So this is a new context. So there is good reason for President Trump to re-engage with President Putin.
The White House saying today they believe they are on the verge of striking a deal with Ukraine over rare earth minerals, which is being framed as an investment in the country. That comes with it de facto national security guarantees for Ukraine. The president confident he can get that deal done and bring the fighting to a halt.
I've spoken to President Putin, and my people are dealing with him constantly, and his people in particular. And they want to do something. I mean, that's what I do. I do deals. My whole life is deals. That's all I know is deals. And I know when somebody wants to make and when somebody doesn't.
And in non-Ukraine news, the two world leaders also discussed tariffs as President Trump has vowed for reciprocity, especially focused on many of these European markets and trade partners. And when asked by reporters today about Mexico and Canada, with their tariff extensions set to expire in days, President Trump said tariffs for those two countries are, quote, on schedule to go into effect. Blake?
Robert Sherman, live for us at the White House tonight. Robert, thank you. At the same time, President Trump meets with Western leaders during a time of strained relations. Vladimir Putin and the Chinese leader, Xi Jinping, spoke with each other today during a phone call. Chinese state media says Xi reaffirmed the partnership with Russia has, quote, no limits. Back here in Washington, the Trump administration with a statement to Iran, also imposing new sanctions on that country's oil industry. The White House says it will disrupt efforts by Iran to make money to fund terrorist activities. Well, the deadline is midnight tonight. That is the ultimatum that has been given to thousands of federal workers by Elon Musk and Doge. Musk requesting an email from each worker laying out 5 bullet points of what they did last week at work. And if they don't send it, they could expect to be let go, he says. But the U.S. Office of Personnel Management now saying that the emails should be considered voluntary. And if not sent, it will not result in losing your job. The following several key agencies, such as the Pentagon, FBI, Homeland Security, instructed their employees that they did not need to reply. Our Joe Khalil with us now on the back and forth with the federal workers. A lot of this, Joe, is happening so quick, so fast. And I think some folks would say good. And I think others might say, well, this is what happens when you go fast.
That's exactly right. Confusion, I think, was the word of the day, as you put it. So we started the day, there were lawsuits immediately trying to block this thing. And we didn't know. Federal workers, are they going to be fired? Are they not? We now know the Office of Personnel Management, as you said, they put out that note later in the afternoon. Nobody's going to be fired as a result of not responding to this email. But I'll tell you what it did. And I want to put Democrats aside for a second because they're always ragging on Elon Musk.
Right.
Just Republicans today, my focus on Capitol Hill. It split them, this email episode, into 2 groups. One group is down with Doge no matter what. That's pretty clear now. They're saying private companies, they have to do this stuff all the time. It's routine.
Part of the argument, right?
It's a good way for Doge to find who's working and who's not.
Okay.
Then there's the other part of the Republican Party, people like Congresswoman Nicole Maliotakis from New York, who I talked to today. Take a listen to what she said.
I don't think it's binding that you can fire people on Twitter. But what I would say is I think, the president has appointed very competent people to lead these agencies. And it's up to those secretaries to see what's going on. We need to do it in a responsible way. And I see sometimes that there's just these rash decisions that are being made.
So rash decisions. And she referenced workers that were fired, then had to be brought back in New York. So that's their beef. And this is becoming a theme with some Republicans is we're okay with downsizing the government. We should do it in the proper way, where you don't make mistakes first and then have to clean up later.
Joe Khalil, live for us tonight. Joe, thank you. Appreciate it. So Republicans starting to push, by the way, for Doge cuts at the state level as well. The Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, taking a page out of the Musk playbook today, announcing the creation of a Florida Doge. And in the state of Ohio, Vivek Ramaswamy, who was originally supposed to run Doge alongside Elon Musk, is now promising to bring some of Doge's principles of efficiency spending and deregulation to the Buckeye State. Here he was when he kicked off his bid earlier today to potentially be Ohio's next governor.
I am honored to announce that I am running to be the next governor of a great state at the heart of the greatest nation known to mankind, the state where I was born and raised, the state where Apoorva and I raise our 2 sons today, a state whose best days are still ahead.
Joining me now is the Ohio Republican Congressman Warren Davidson, live with us up on Capitol Hill. Congressman, thanks for being with us.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Pretty meteoric rise for Vivek Ramaswamy. He was basically no one knew who he was in politics, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, something like that. Got into the presidential race. Here he is running to be governor of your home state. President Trump endorsed Byron Donalds in Florida the other day. Should he endorse Vivek Ramaswamy? And where are you?
I don't think President Trump will endorse Vivek right away. Maybe never. I don't know. But I do know there's a lot of energy behind Vivek. There's a lot of interest in where he's coming from. And so people that haven't heard about Vivek, where have you been? He's certainly been in the media. But then on the ground in the state, there are a lot of people that are like, well, I don't really know much about him. So campaigning for governor, I'm sure he'll put his whole heart into it, and we'll see how it goes.
You just heard Joe Khalil talk about how there's kind of 2 camps among Republicans right now. Doge no matter what, or maybe Doge with some subtleties and some questions. Where are you?
Look, I agree that secretaries run their departments, and Doge, while very helpful, it should be viewed as a resource, not the operating system for the entire federal government. I think they've highlighted some very important things, and I think the early interaction with Marco Rubio was exactly right. They highlighted problems with USAID, and then Marco Rubio took over USAID. He decided what he was going to do to scale down USAID. The idea that you're going to run all this from Elon Musk's Twitter feed or X feed, really isn't good. And I think that Elon Musk and Susie Wiles would do well to sit down and have a little heart-to-heart and run things through the secretaries, in my opinion.
Do you think Susie Wiles should sit him down? Susie Wiles is is the president's chief of staff. Do you think Susie Wiles should sit Elon Musk down and have that conversation?
I think so. I think, look, I think she's really got the grip on the cabinet. She is the chief, and I think, really, Elon Musk is brilliant. We're grateful for him. He's an amazing guy. I admire him tremendously, and frankly, it's a great tool. I mean, you look at the 5-minute management tool. If you've got a small team, okay, you should be able to know that. But if you've got a massive bureaucratic organization, frankly, the people that are opposed to this are the people that are underperforming, or the layers and layers of management that don't want to realize, wow, we might not need that many layers of management. And so it's a useful tool to expose it. It's a valid point to say, unless you've really built the architecture out, there's no way to read that many emails. So why are we doing this? So you want people to be productive. That is sort of the point of Doge. And I think the best way to do that is to take the good ideas and route them through the secretaries.
You are you're a West Point grad, 1995, I believe. You graduated from the U.S. Military Academy. There's the reason why I bring it up, and you talk about the secretaries and the departments, is there was the email for Doge about explain the 5 things you did the last week, or if not, you consider it a resignation from Elon Musk the other day. The Department of Defense was one of the agencies, Congressman, that said, no. You don't need to respond to that. Were they right? The agencies, and it's one of many, but are those agencies who said, no, you don't need to respond to it? Do you think they got this one right?
Well, I didn't see if Pete Hegseth put that out, but I know, look, Pete Hegseth loves Elon Musk just like I do, but I think Pete Hegseth's the last word within the Department of Defense, except, of course, for the President of the United States. If Donald Trump wants to send that out himself, by all means. I mean, he's the president. But it really just feeds some of the, I think, messaging that Democrats are target Elon Musk. The reality is he's brilliant. He's able to lay useful tools out for people to put to work and identify things that, frankly, Congress needs to take action on. So what I've been focused on is, look, I can watch executive orders and news feeds from Ohio. I'm here in the Capitol because it's time for Congress to really meet the moment and pass changes in funding and policy so that they become law. We had a great first term for Donald Trump, but it was temporary because Joe Biden came in and undid and reversed all these executive orders. Maybe the most obvious place is the border. I mean, you highlight 200 people on a Saturday. Are you kidding me? You were talking 200,000 in a weekend when Joe Biden was president. What a difference leadership makes. But if we don't lock in a law, how's this going to be permanent and enduring? And so I've been focused on my lane right now as a member of Congress, and I'm really encouraging my colleagues to meet the moment, and that begins on March 14th. So while we're working towards reconciliation this week, and that's mandatory spending, the real opportunity is between now and March 14th to fund things like border security, like a focused military, and de-weaponizing our federal government.
I don't want to get too wonky, and I got to run, but I want to ask you, Congressman, I don't want to get too wonky for our viewers here, but tomorrow there's a big moment where Republicans, we're going to find out, do they support what Mike Johnson and Republican leadership want them to support when it comes to the president's demands and the president's priorities? Do you think you get there, or are there still some Republicans who are going to hold you back?
Well, look, we don't currently have the votes, and we shouldn't have the votes because the mandatory spending is a little wonky. Is about 70% of the spending. The discretionary part, which is the part that expires March 14th, that's the other 30% of the spending. There's no plan for that. The Speaker hopefully will present that tomorrow morning at 9. If he's got a great plan and everyone loves it, then by all means go to the floor. But if it goes to the floor without that plan, I don't think there's any chance this bill passes.
Wow. All right, we'll leave it there. Congressman Davidson, I should say, I think that the highest numbers on the border got to about 11 or 12,000 a day, but point taken either way. I just wanted to throw that out there. Warren Davidson, Republican of Ohio, thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You got it. All right, still to come, the president is hitting China hard with the new economic penalties potentially as the trade war escalates just beyond tariffs. How this could potentially impact your wallet in the upcoming months. I'll explain, plus what the president of France said to President Trump about Ukraine's proposals. Was that praise that we just heard from Emmanuel Macron? Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is the Center of Politics. You're watching The Hill, and we're back in 4 minutes.
Elderly dementia patients have increased risk of death or stroke. Caplyta is not approved for dementia-related psychosis. Report fever, confusion, or stiff muscles which may be life-threatening, or uncontrolled muscle movements which may be permanent. Common side effects include sleepiness, dizziness, nausea, and dry mouth. These aren't all the side effects.
In the darkness of bipolar 1 and 2 depression, Caplyta can help you let in the light. Ask your doctor about Caplyta. Find savings and support at Caplyta.com.
NewsNation tonight. Her location unclear, her identity unknown. But this tech genius is using AI to uncover billions in government waste and corruption. Intel she feeds directly to Elon Musk and the Doge in her first TV interview. Tonight, 7/6 Central on NewsNation.
Welcome back. With thousands of federal workers facing uncertainty under the threat of Elon Musk's and Doge's chainsaw, as we saw the other day, more than 100 House Democrats are pushing for the federal agencies facing Doge's ultimatum to call their bluff and renounce Musk's initiative. A letter to the heads of 24 federal agencies reading today in part, quote, Mr. Musk's threat is reckless, cruel, unlawful, and unenforceable. You must take immediate action to clarify that the federal employees at your agency are not obligated to respond to this ill-conceived email stunt, referring to the email that was sent out the other day. Tell us what you did last week. And joining us now is the Democratic congressman from the state of California, back here on the Hill, Congressman Ami Bera. Congressman, nice to see you as always, sir.
Blake, thanks for having me on.
So I went through that letter, Congressman. It was 100-plus Democrats, and I was looking for your name, and you weren't on it. Why?
You know, from my perspective, the email that went out really is somewhat sophomoric. I mean, that's not the way you go about justifying someone's job. I agree with my colleague from Ohio who's just on. Give it to the cabinet secretaries, the folks that are in charge of running the agencies. They're Donald Trump's handpicked folks, and let them go through their agencies, see what programs are relevant, which ones aren't, where you might be able to downsize. But again,
so you would be good with
asking everyone.
So you would be good with both layoffs and cuts if Musk and Doge took a back seat and the secretaries did the work?
Well, what I would do is I hope the secretaries work with us in Congress. As Congressman Davidson said, you've got to pass legislation, you've got to codify legislation. So, again, I'm not here arguing that there isn't some waste, that there aren't inefficient programs, but work with us. And again, if Elon Musk identifies stuff, he's obviously a technology wizard, modernize government, make it work better and more efficiently for the American people. But again, on the layoffs, the human resources side, that's best left to the agencies.
Okay. You are a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. There was I thought, a fascinating press conference today at the White House. Emmanuel Macron, President Trump, and Macron, Congressman, for all the conversation in the last week of what is the president saying about Russia and Putin, and why is he saying it? Why is he saying what he is about Vladimir Zelensky? Emmanuel Macron today was fairly complimentary, but he was fairly complimentary of what the president was doing on this possible security for rare earths deal. I want you to listen to the French leader, and then I'll get your reaction on the other side.
First of all, allow me to commend you on your decision to work with President Zelensky and to conclude this agreement that's so important for the U.S. and Ukraine on rare earths, critical minerals, but also having substantive conversations with President Zelensky during this key phase of achieving this deal.
I mean, that's a different narrative than I've heard in a lot of corners, Congressman.
Yeah, it is, and I think the Europeans understand that we are making this pivot to Asia, trying to bring this illegal war in Ukraine to an end, and that Europe's going to have to step up and take responsibility for European security. Again, I think you'd find a lot of Democrats that support that notion that, if we're going to pivot to Asia, we've got a threat in China, then Europe's got to step up. And part of rebuilding Ukraine, I think the American people would say, okay, well, are there ways for us to get some benefits? We need those critical minerals. Can we do it in a way that benefits the Ukrainian people, but also fills a need that we have?
So do you think, if I hear you, you think the president's strategy, or at least the way he's going about it, is right?
Well, I wouldn't present it the way Donald Trump's talked about it, but look, this is a war. It's the third year right now. It was an illegal invasion by Putin. I don't trust Vladimir Putin, but right now it's at a stalemate, and maybe Russia even is winning a little bit here. So can we bring this to a conclusion in a way that guarantees Ukrainian security, but also, they probably will have to, have some occupied territories here. And then can we pivot to the bigger threat in China?
All right. We'll leave it there. You picked up on the same thing I did. listening to Macron, I was like, wait a minute. He was fairly complimentary today of the president. Whatever you think about how we've gotten to here, it was certainly a fascinating scene to see those two and hear those two next to each other today. Congressman Baer, I got to leave it there. Thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. Great. Thanks, Blake. You got it. All right. Still much more ahead tonight here on the Hill. Big news at the border. The president says the border's closed. The latest numbers might actually suggest he's close to right. Have you seen what the head of the Department of Homeland Security is now saying? Plus, our Allie Bradley reveals exactly who is being targeted for enforcement. Plus, why China will get charged a fee every time they enter a U.S. port. It's part of the ongoing trade war, what the administration could be doing next. And new details on the congressional investigation into JFK. What happens now when we return? Tonight, Pope Francis resting after having spent a 10th night in a hospital in Rome. The 88-year-old pontiff hospitalized for bronchitis on February 14th and is being treated for pneumonia. The Vatican saying in a statement, in part, quote, "The night went well. The Pope slept and is resting." Now, the Pope's blood tests also detected early signs of kidney issues, but doctors say they have that under control. New developments today on the JFK assassination files. Republicans on the House Oversight Committee announced a hearing for March 26th to take a deeper look into what happened that day. The Congresswoman, Anna Paulina Luna, announcing that the task force will even visit the site of the assassination in Dallas, Texas, and speak with first-hand witnesses. Well, the drop at the southern border continues with a big claim from the head of the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, posting to social media, quote, "On Saturday, CBP encountered just 1,200 aliens at the U.S. southern border. That's the lowest single apprehension day in over 15 years. And now law enforcement has its eyes set on a new policy. According to an internal ICE memo obtained by Reuters, the Trump administration is directing the agency to track down unaccompanied migrant children for deportation. The initiative aiming to ensure that children are not victims of human trafficking or other forms of exploitation. ICE also moving to require fingerprinting and DNA tests for sponsors of migrant children. Our Allie Bradley live on the front lines once again from Del Rio, Texas this evening. Allie?
Yeah, hey, Blake. So right now we know that since 2019, about 600,000 unaccompanied children crossed the southern border. The vast majority of them, we're talking about 540,000, came in under the Biden administration. Now, with this new directive, we expect ICE officers to be out kind of trying to find these unaccompanied minors. But here's the deal. When you hear that, when everybody hears unaccompanied minors, we automatically go to these tender age little ones, right? The young children is what we think. But when we've gone through the data, we actually found the vast majority are boys, young men over the age of 14 is what we're actually seeing crossing the southern border. So the majority of them are coming from the Northern Triangle. We're talking about Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, and El Salvador, but they're in Texas, a lot of them. So since this fiscal year began, we know at least 3,000 unaccompanied children have been sent to the Lone Star State to sponsors here, California following closely behind. Now, we did talk with retired Homeland Security Investigation Special Agent Victor Avila. He says that when these kids cross, all of them aren't necessarily being truthful, and there needs some more vetting at the southern border. Take a listen.
A lot of them, by the way, are 19 years old, 18, 19, 20, that look very young. We don't know their identity, and they come across pretending to be a minor. They knew that if they were a minor, more than likely, and there was a very high percentage here, that the assistant U.S. attorney would decline to prosecute.
Now, Blake, we have interacted with a lot of unaccompanied children down here at the southern border, namely two little girls from Ecuador, 10 and 7 years old, and they were crying for their mom. Their mom was apparently already in Dallas somewhere. When I met them, we were in Arizona. I asked a Border Patrol agent, what are the chances that they're going to be reunited with their family? And he said, pretty slim, because oftentimes those note cards just lead them right back into the hands of traffickers. Blake.
Our Allie Bradley live once again on the southern border tonight. Allie, thank you. All right, so did the latest bargaining chip in the U.S.-China trade war just get unveiled? The United States Trade Representative now proposing potentially millions of dollars in fees for each time a Chinese ship makes a port call in the United States. Now, this could mean that the prices for goods on those ships could soon get more expensive for U.S. consumers. It's one to watch as the U.S. Trade Representative will hear comments through March 24th. But it also appears a way for the Trump administration to potentially escalate against China even beyond tariffs. Joining me now is the CEO of Flexport, a leader in global supply chain management and logistics. Back here on the show once again, Ryan Peterson. Ryan, always great to see you.
Great to be here, Mike.
So you had a great post online. You were like, yeah, I know everyone's talking about Elon. I know everyone's talking about Doge. I get it. But this is what you should be paying attention to. Explain why.
Well, it's a pretty big deal. They're talking about imposing a fee of up to $1.5 million per port call. Most of them would be $1 million. And a typical ship, this is for Chinese-made ships. So if the ship's made in China, you got to pay $1 million at each port call. Now, a typical ship will call 3 times. It'll stop, for example, in Seattle, then Oakland, then LA. So that's $3 million per ship. Ship on each voyage will make about $15 million in revenue. So $3 million is a pretty big tax to pay on all container. Now, all container shipping arriving in the U.S., we of the new fleet, China's making about 70% of container ships. And really interesting here is that if the fleet has even one container ship in it, even if the ship itself is not made in China, if that company has one Chinese-made ship, they would still have to pay $500,000 per port call. So there's almost no getting around this. Every container shipping line has at least one ship made in China, it seems like.
Yeah, so let's just use those back-of-the-envelope numbers, right? 3 million possibly on 15, that's 20%. I'm looking at the top imports from China: smartphones, computers, batteries, toys, video games. That cost gets passed on somewhere, Ryan. Does that mean my phone or my computer or my kid's toy goes up 20%?
No, it won't go up 20% because this is just the price of shipping it. Now, depend on the value of the goods, what the ratio is of the price of shipping it, but it'll go up. Not many ways around that. The ocean carriers will try to reconfigure their networks. They might sell off Chinese ships. The interesting thing here is that it's not like the U.S. produces these container ships. The container ships made in America are really small. They're kind of for Jones Act, we call it, which is domestic shipping going to Hawaii, Alaska, Puerto Rico. These big container ships that are going to and from Asia, they're either made in China, Japan, or Korea. So the big winners here will be Japan and Korea. The other big winner is going to be Canada. Because the U.S., the carriers will bring the ships to Canada, unload there, and bring it down on a train. So, it's interesting to see how it's going to play out.
Speaking of Canada, here was President Trump earlier today about tariffs. I want to get your reaction on the other side.
The tariffs are going forward on time, on schedule. This is an abuse that took place for many, many years.
What are you seeing, Ryan? The president says tariffs on China and Mexico are, of course, our partners, neighbors to the north and the south, in a week, and then also reciprocal tariffs in a month, basically starting April 2nd is the plan. From your perch, and again, for our audience here on NewsNation or those listening to us on SiriusXM, Flexport sees everything across the globe. What are you seeing right now as companies are trying to figure all this out?
Yeah, and Flexport is one of the largest logistics companies in the world, and we have technology that monitors everything that's happening in terms of trade flows. The reality is it's difficult with these with Trump's policy statements to see what is he really going to do and what's negotiating leverage. He's figured out that he has major leverage over Canada and Mexico. Those countries badly need trade with the United States, frankly, more than the United States needs trade with them. And he can get them to do other things that matter on the political, geopolitical, geostrategic stage, which might involve, it definitely involves border security, immigration. We just heard the sad story right before me coming on here about that. Fentanyl, drugs. There's a lot of other things that matter. And if he can get them to do what he wants through tariffs, it might be that the tariffs never actually hit. If they do, it's not good for really either side. People only trade because both of them are made better off. So any barrier to trade makes both parties worse off.
Are you seeing prices go up real quick or no?
Well, it's a mixed bag right now. Mostly the air freight prices are coming way down. Remember, 50% of all the air freight in the world now is flown in from Chinese e-commerce. and they've threatened to ban this duty-free shipping out of China. Right. So if that goes away, the price of air freight is going to get really cheap. So that's a positive news for importers and exporters. The Red Sea is the big thing to watch in ocean freight. The day before Trump came in, the Houthis declared that they would stop shooting missiles at the ships in the Red Sea. And we're waiting right now as an industry for the insurance companies to allow the ships to return to the Red Sea. But if they do, price of ocean freight is going to come way down. The ships being able to transit the Red Sea will be a big deal to make shipping much cheaper and faster. So there's some positive news on the horizon potentially as well for importers. They are facing higher duties, it looks like, around the world, but there's some positive price of freight itself.
You took us all over the world. We appreciate you, sir. Ryan Peterson, CEO of Flexport, with us once again here on The Hill tonight. Talk to you soon. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks. If you want me to stay on for the JFK assassination, I know everything now. Have a great day, guys.
Folks want to know what's there, right? At the end of the day, folks want to know.
I'm staying tuned, man. I'm going to be dialing right back in here to watch that.
Thanks, Ryan. Catch you next time. All right, still to come here on The Hill. Speaking of wanting to know, what's going on with Doge? Elon's ultimatum, why he wants federal workers to explain what they did last week. So what about this concept of, you know what, you got to tell me what you did. Give me 5 bullet points. What if I were to tell you that there's an easy way for companies to do just that? I looked it up. We'll explain it. Other side of the break.
You've heard of Elon Musk's Doge program, looking for fraud and waste in the federal government. Well, there is a woman, a computer programmer, working behind the scenes in secret, helping Doge find all of the fraud and waste.
Do you think you're going to find a lot of corruption, not only with Democrats, but also with Republicans?
Oh, I already did. I cannot tell you enough how much both are involved. It is everywhere.
You'll find her interview tonight on NewsNation. It's going to be at 7 o'clock Eastern.
The unknown, but this tech genius is using AI to uncover billions in government waste and corruption. Intel she feeds directly to Elon Musk and the Doge in her first TV interview. Tonight, 7/6 Central on NewsNation.
All right, welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. Live look across the landscape here in Washington. It's now roughly 5 hours and 20 minutes until the newest deadline, kind of, sort of. Workers at federal agencies told to respond with 5 bullet points they accomplished last week, or else face potential consequences. However, some agencies like the Pentagon, Homeland Security, even the FBI, amongst others, have told their employees to stand down from that order, and the Office of Personnel Management has described it as voluntary. President Trump backed it, though, earlier today.
We have to find out where these people are. Who are they? And we said, if you don't respond, we assume you're not around.
And that holds, that stands.
And you're not getting paid anymore, too.
Now, while this practice turns out to be controversial here in Washington, it's actually not that unusual in the business world. Companies, for example, like Adobe, I looked it up today, they have specific templates to document employee efficiency. In just a few minutes this morning, I was easily able to find that template online. Another one by the recruiting company Indeed, a way to show your boss your work and your progress. Full panel here with me now. T.W. Origi, former communications aide for Senator Lindsey Graham, Niall Stanage, White House columnist for The Hill, Julia Manchester, national political reporter for The Hill, and Kurt Bardella, NewsNation contributor, Democratic strategist. Hello to you all. Nice to have you all in. I was online and I'm like, this is done in the business world, Kurt. And I found those templates in like all of 3 minutes. So what's wrong?
Because Tim Cook doesn't walk into X and say, hey, tell me what all of you do, and if you don't, you're fired. You know why? Because Tim Cook doesn't work there. He's not their actual boss. I'd have no problem with this if any cabinet secretary that was just confirmed and took the oath of office sent out this directive. I have no problem if Donald Trump himself, the president, chief executive of America, sent this action. I have a problem with someone who's actually outside of government, who's unelected, unaccountable, giving directives to the entire federal. Who do we work for here?
So it's just Musk.
Correct. That's my problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I would agree with you. The secretaries should take the lead. You've seen, obviously, agencies with national security implications step in and say, like, hit the pause button. However, in order to cut government down to a size that I believe and a lot of conservatives believe is where it should be, you kind of got to move fast. And I've appreciated Elon Musk and at least trying to be innovative. Look, the purpose of this wasn't just what are you doing today, justify yourself today and every day. It's really like when a boss in the private sector looks at your Slack and says, hey, you've been offline for a long time today. What are you doing? It's if they got an automatic reply saying, I'm away from the office, that would suffice. Okay, they want to make sure you're checking your email and you're doing your job during the day. It's a one-time gut check.
But is he onto something here? Because like I even heard, it was interesting to me, we had Congressman Warren Davidson, a Republican, very conservative from Ohio, on the show earlier tonight. Here's what he said.
The idea that you're going to run all this from Elon Musk's Twitter feed or X feed, really isn't good. And I think that Elon Musk and Susie Wiles would do well to sit down and have a little heart-to-heart and run things through the secretaries, in my opinion.
Susie Wiles is the White House chief of staff.
I mean, I think all of this sort of brings to surface, I guess, a bit of a rupture, a divide we've sort of figured was going on behind the scenes for quite some time, sort of this tension between Elon Musk and staff and other Trump administration officials. You have Elon Musk being so trigger happy, sending this email, and then you have Trump loyalists like Pete Hegseth, for example, pushing back, pumping the brakes on this. I think it's exposing a divide. And overall, I think it's created a lot of confusion. I mean, you have this email going out. You have these agency heads, saying, slow down, you don't have to do this. But then Trump is saying he agrees with Elon Musk. So it's really begs the question.
It was kind of all over the place.
All over the place. And it begs the question, I mean, if Elon Musk says something, does it automatically mean
is he the
Trump
president
agrees
now?
with him?
Well, also to Julia's point, it's not just about the divide. It's about the sense that there's a turf battle going on here. Elon Musk putting his word into all these different agencies to the point where you have people like Kash Patel, the ultimate Trump loyalist, saying, no, we're not doing that. Tulsi Gabbard, the same for the intelligence community. And the point about private companies do this too. Yes, in isolation, but we can't shear off Musk's actions from the broader context, which is that he's trying to fire people in a sweeping way across the government and has often made misleading claims in doing so.
You just mentioned private companies. As the Doge debate continues here in Washington, the private sector, pointing this out, continues to shape its workforce. For example, Starbucks announcing today it's laying off more than 1,000 employees globally while also eliminating open and unfilled positions. Now, on this show on Friday, I pressed Congressman Byron Donalds about federal job losses in his district. Watch.
Having a federal job is not a lifetime appointment. It's simply not.
So what about that argument, Kurt? Because you see it in the private sector all the time. Some of the biggest companies in the world, in this country right now, are laying off their workers. And you've got a congressman there who basically says, look, it's not a lifetime appointment. Federal judges are lifetime appointments. There's some 800 plus of them. They're the ones that get them.
I want everybody in America to pay attention right now to what Republicans are saying to justify this, because if Donald Trump is okay with the employees under his purview being unilaterally dismissed this way, whose side do you think he's going to be on when the CEOs and the billionaire class and all the private sector people do this to the working class in America? How he treats his own people tells you how much he cares about you.
I think it's easy also for someone like Byron Donalds to make that argument. I mean, obviously in Naples, Florida, in that district, there are federal workers. But, I would encourage us to look at someone like Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia, who today responded to a lot of Democratic attacks, which are going to be flying in the governor's race this coming November. Youngkin, of course, not up for re-election, but he's announcing this Virginia Has Jobs initiative, saying that there's 250,000 jobs available in Virginia. He said, I have compassion and empathy for federal workers, but here's private sector jobs are available. Democrats obviously saying that's it's not compassionate.
So what's the balance here?
Well, I want to pump the brakes just a touch. Look, we absolutely should be compassionate about everyone who's lost their jobs and tread lightly and communicate why we're doing what we are doing. My friend lost his job this week in these cuts. I know what that feels like for him. But I want to make a broader point. We keep hearing the word that this is unprecedented. That is gaslighting the American people about American history. For the first century of this country's history, the executive, the president, had full control over every single employee that worked under that branch. In fact, they all left at the end of a term, and he could fill it with whoever he wanted. So it's not true that these sort of cuts are unprecedented. They just haven't been seen recently. On top of that, for the first 200 years of our country, the president was able, until 1977, the president was able to impound funds that Congress appropriated that he did not think were appropriate. That's just the way it is. So yes, it is tough. We're learning this all anew, but it is not unprecedented. And for much of our nation's history, this is the way
What's
business
unprecedented, though, is those presidents didn't outsource that work to J.P. Morgan to do it for them.
I'll give you the last word here.
Well, I just want to get back to this thought experiment, like this is what's going on in the private sector. If a private sector CEO said, great news, everyone, I've saved $8 billion, and it turned out to be $8 million, that person would be under serious question. If a private sector CEO said, I fired 300 people who occupy positions to do with nuclear safety. Oh, sorry about that, I'll have to rehire them. Would that CEO have a lot of confidence in them? I don't think so.
Yeah, and if the CEO fired his audit committee of a public traded company, that wouldn't go over well either.
Some of the conversation here in Washington. Thank y'all. Appreciate it. Still to come, what's a bigger mystery than UAPs and JFK? There was one over the weekend. My take after the break. They're out there. Reports coming up next. President Trump says the war in Ukraine could end within weeks, but that NATO membership for Ukraine is off the table. So how will a deal get done? Elizabeth will be talking to the four-star general Philip Breedlove. That's 1 minute from now, right here on News Nation. All right, so a big mystery deepened over the weekend. No, not UAPs in our skies, not what the JFK files may or may not reveal. But we'll probably get that answer in the upcoming weeks. Rather this, the 94-year-old Oracle of Omaha. Did you happen to see that Warren Buffett revealed that Berkshire Hathaway is now sitting on over $330 billion in cash? That's more cash than any company in the United States. And consider this, Berkshire Hathaway doubled its cash position in just the past year alone. Now, Buffett wrote to Berkshire investors, quote, the great majority of your money remains in equities, and that preference won't change.